So you're not going to know what you want in life until you're exposed to it. What does this mean? Well, for example, let's just say this for an example. Exposure is essentially your environment, essentially is who you're around, mainly. So if you find yourself to be somewhere you don't want to be, or you want to change, you're going to have to expose yourself to different things. And I don't just mean environment, and I don't just mean people. But you need to change the things that you know, because how are you going to know something that you don't know? So you need to expose yourself to many different things, which means you need to be open-minded, you need to pay attention, you need to be willing to be a bit bored, you need to be willing to listen to long-form videos and take notes, just to figure out what you really want and what you really enjoy and what you really like and what you're really truly aiming for, right? So I recommend writing all these things down. I recommend getting organized and having a system to this, which is what I created, which will help out, because I want to help people like me that were in the position that I'm in. And I'm still figuring things out. As you move up, as you change, as you transform, your exposure changes, because the things that I've been exposed to as this person, I could have never been exposed to as the person that I was, you see. So exposure is really important. If you don't know your choices, how are you gonna choose? If I never seen the color purple, how am I gonna know that that's my favorite color? Or the rainbow. Even if I haven't seen the entire rainbow or multiple colors, how am I gonna choose which one's my favorite color? How am I gonna you're not even gonna know it exists. So exposure is what allows you to know what your possibilities are and what actually exists out there, right? That's what exposure does for you. So exposure is the first step. You need to expose yourself to different things and expose yourself to you need to control what you're exposed to. Now, if you're somebody who's in a messed up environment or a very negative environment, it's going to be very important that you have headphones or AirPods for one, and your exposure is going to come mostly from your phone or your computer, whatever type of internet access you have. That's going to have to be the bulk of your exposure, because your environment, you're not going to run into anybody that has a lifestyle that you aspire to have, or has an insight that you aspire to adopt. So if you want to become someone more than you are, you're going to have to expose yourself to that type of person that you want to be, or someone similar, and emulate that, or sort of copy it and make it your own. And that's how we do things. That's how change begins. Exposure has to happen first. Exposure has to be number 0. Exposure. Because like I said, you're not going to ever know what you want until you're exposed to it. If you don't know that this profession even exists, how are you even going to know that you're fucking meant for it? How are you going to know that you're good at it? How are you going to know that this is my passion? This is what I want to do with the rest of my life, if you never even had the knowledge of it existing. So exposure has to happen first. So you need to start exposing yourself to different things. And then input is number 2. So with exposure, you choose what you decide to input in your mind. And the input is really the brain reprogramming. You have to reprogram your brain because you're a person, you're a certain type of person that you don't want to be. So that means that your brain is not programmed correctly, meaning you need to input a certain type and a certain amount of knowledge consistently in your brain in order to become, or the beginning stages of becoming, the person that you want to be. It all comes down to your mind. So input is really the reprogramming. Input, essentially, the essential definition, the way I define it, is what you consistently consume. What you consume on a consistent basis. So we all have input. We all are inputting and programming our brains right now. We all have input. We all participate in input. So what are you inputting in your brain now that's conducive to the lifestyle that you want? And what are you inputting in your brain now that's conducive to the lifestyle that you have currently? So if you have a life currently that you're not happy with, it's because your input is not it's because of your input is shit, essentially. If your life is shit, it's because your input, your programming is shit. You need to change that. You need to change your input. You need to change what you're consuming consistently on a daily basis. And I am talking about social media, and I am talking about videos. I'm talking about the thing is, input comes from our senses. It's what we see, hear, taste and smell. All of that is input. All of that's programming. So if you are someone sitting there and you want to change, you don't like what you see in the mirror, or you don't like what you see around you, you don't like your environment, you don't like your life, well, you need to sit there and ask yourself, well, what am I inputting in myself, in my brain every single day? Am I inputting positive things, or am I inputting negative things? What type of music am I listening to? What words am I listening to? What words am I listening to? Right? This is something you need to ask yourself really, really. And this is going to take time. This is going to take time. Sometimes this part takes the most time, even more time than the change, the actual choice part. Input, I had to flood my brain with positive input for like a year or two, and I still do it. But I had to do that in order to get my ass up and moving, because once you change your input, that's going to change your mindset. And then your mindset, once that changes, you're going to start making different choices. You're going to start making better choices for yourself. And then your choices become habits. What you choose consistently becomes habit, and your habits ultimately shape your identity.